Now, this time of year, let's face it, is a bit like exam fever, as in colleges and schools all around the country, students are concentrating on their GCSEs, their A-levels, and the standard assessment test, which actually starts at the age of 7. Now, for many, the pressure is immense, and with increased competition in the workplace, exam results are more important than ever. Recently, it was very unfortunate. A boy of 12 killed himself after receiving a bad personal report from his teacher. Now, it's clearly a very, very worrying time for parents. And here now, with advice on how to help your child cope, is Professor Ted Ragg from Exeter University and teacher Hank Roberts, who hit the press in recent days for being critical of the current system. So welcome to both of you. Nice to see you. It strikes me, Ted, that the whole area of teaching really has changed. Enormous pressure, not only on the child, but on the teacher these days in terms of league tables and Oftel and being analysed all the time.
Ofsted.
Ofsted, sorry. What did I say?
Yeah,
Oftel.
Oftel, yeah.
Wrong organisation.
More innocuous, I think, yeah. Well, no, it is. There's a lot of pressure on teachers. And, of course, with the league tables, it means that your school is actually ranked. And many teachers feel that's a bit unfair because it depends where you live and where you teach. You may have very highly selected children, or you may have children who are not so selected. And, therefore, there is pressure. And, of course, sometimes that pressure can transmit to the children and the parents if they sense that their school's a bit anxious to do well.
So, Hank, what's your objection, really, to this pressure these days?
Well, I think that this government is trying to lead the profession down the route, basically, in Japan. I mean, in Japan, there were 192 child suicides last year, and I think that's wrong.
Why was that?
Because, I mean, not all of them due to the pressure, but in Japan there is huge pressure from a very early age to do well in the exams, to go on to good universities and so forth. And that's the route that I think that this government is trying to lead us down. And the teachers don't want that, nor do the parents. It's not fair. They need a childhood.
So do you as a teacher then feel under enormous pressure?
We're under tremendous stress. I mean, I've been teaching over 25 years, and it has got worse and worse and worse. And the whole teaching profession, I travel around the country speaking to meetings because I'm in all three of the teachers' unions, so I've been all over the place speaking about this, and all of them say the same. They'll all be saying the same thing at their conferences as well this Easter. It's gone too far, really.
Of course, I could go devil's advocate and I could say, look, there have always been exams in one form or another. You just call them different things these days, but there have always been exams and people have done okay. So how would you put that in perspective, Ted?
I think it's changed, though, because it's true there have always been exams, but until about 7 or 8 years ago, the exams were mainly for 16-year-olds, and then back in the old days there was the 11 plus, whereas now children are tested at 7 and 11 and 14 and 16 and 18.
And talk of even 4.
Well, yes, that's what's called baseline assessment, which, if it's done properly, is a good idea to see what children can do when they come into school. But, of course, if it becomes another source of pressure, then it wouldn't be a good idea.
Yeah, so what do you think yourself, then, about children being assessed so early? You know, how do you think that makes the child feel?
Well, assessment is a good thing if it's done in a positive way and to help the child. I mean, for example, there's what's known as diagnostic testing, where you try to find out what a child can and can't do, and teachers have always done this. And if you want to know whether or not children can handle tens and units or fractions or decimals, then a quick kind of test that tells you what they understand and don't understand is actually very helpful. The difference is these very public tests that get put into league tables, I think, and the pressure that goes with them. That's been the big change.
Hank, where do you stand on that?
Well, what's going on now is that they have the school day. I mean, the government's proposing to extend that anyhow, which will be worse for teachers. When it's worse for teachers, by the way, as you know, in any relationship, we face them day to day, that you can't help transmit that stress and worry and so forth to them. Nowadays, it's going to be that your pay even is related in a way to this. So that obviously puts the pressure on them even further. And the hours that they're doing, there's after-school booster lessons, there's a Saturday school mini schools, there's holiday revision classes, and the hours are just getting longer and longer, and this is extended down to primary schools. You know, it is exactly like, I think, the Industrial Revolution, where a lot of children didn't have a life. It's a different sort of thing.
I must say, I do look at the schedule sometimes, and I look at little ones who are in school really quite late in the day, and you think, where has childhood gone? Where has play gone? And so, I mean, do you think it's just gone to the other extreme now, Ted?
In some cases, yes. I mean, there's still a lot of good work around and a lot of relaxed work. I mean, I go into a lot of schools and teachers work very hard to keep it informal and to reduce the pressures on children. And there's a lot of fun still in schools. But it's true, there are a lot of additional things now, and it depends whether certain children are having to do all of them. I mean, if there's an after-school club and you want to belong to it, fine, that's not so much a source of pressure as pleasure. And the same with vacation courses. I mean, I went to a number of the summer schools, and children were having a great time doing a variety of things, ranging from sports right through to literacy and preparation for exams. But they were well done, and they really enjoyed them. But of course, if you have to do them all, and it's against your wishes, and it appears to be very dreary and a drudge, then that's a different matter.
I think also it's the expectancy these days, isn't it? I mean, for example, when I was growing up and going to school, not so many people got into university then anyway. So the expectancy, in a way, was lower. Nowadays, it's all things for all people, which is great. But I think a lot of parents who didn't have the opportunity saying, I want my child to go to university, I want you to do well. So it's that living out of your own life through your child. So it is big pressure.
Well, it's transmitted, though, as well, to the pupils themselves directly. I mean, I had a colleague at school who said that their child come to them and said they wanted to do an after-school club, as Ted was saying, in basketball, which they really wanted to do, but there was a SATS booster lesson at the same time, and they felt that really they had to go to the SATS booster lesson and not go to the basketball. That's a terrible thing, I think, to be putting on 10-year-olds, and especially if you're going to take it further down. I think it warps education, which is about the whole person.
Well, Ted's going to be taking calls today on revision. So let's just give people an idea of the kind of things that maybe they'd like to call in about in terms of the right way for a child to study for an exam.
Well, nowadays, of course, it's not just the tests at 7, 11 and 14, but there's a lot of pressure on people doing GCSEs, where they might be taking 10 subjects, sometimes even more, then A-levels, which, of course, are the passport to university in a number of the professions, and now we've got about a third of people going on to university, so we're not talking about a very small percentage, we're talking about a lot of people. So the issues are, what can parents do, for example? I mean, it is a time when people want to do their best. How can parents support them? So perhaps someone's got a child and they'd like to know how they can help their own child. Perhaps there's a student who's about to revise now for GCSEs because schools have just broken up and in a few weeks' time they'll be doing them, who's thinking, how on earth do I get my head around these 10 subjects?
How do you get my parents off my back?
Yeah, it might well be that as well, yes.
By the way, I'd just like to thank you very much indeed, but I also thought that with the names of Ted and Hank, that you sounded like a sort of dueling guitars.
We're a country and western
team.
We're going to work
It's the Ted and Hank show.
Rival band.
If we can go work with Reba, I'll be there.
Exactly, I think you do very well. Anyway, thank you both very much indeed for joining us. See you later.